Along with Scott DeCamp, Cal VanSingel, and Mike Taylor down on the end over there. And we're here for the last West Michigan 1st and 10, they tell us, huh, Scott?
Yeah, it's the last one. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
The season's just starting.
Yeah, it really does. It gets faster every year, doesn't it? Well, then, then there was one, guys, that you were just telling me before we went on here, 2011 was the last time we've been home for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, home for the semifinals even.
Right.
That was the last time that Muskegon area had gotten shut out of the semifinal round even, was 2011.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about it before, we all kind of thought that our teams are going to go in, maybe the decided underdogs, except I hadn't seen Muskegon Catholic or Lawton, so I thought, well, maybe something would happen over there, and boy, it didn't even happen there. So in I guess our worst fears came true, didn't they?
Yeah, and I mean, I covered that game. Mike called that game, and going into it, I guess I was leaning a lot on what I had seen with my own eyes with Lawton, but that was a long time ago. That was when I was in Kalamazoo, from like 2000 to 2013. They were trying to grow the program. They were kind of making strides.
Sure.
They had the Carson brothers that were coaching for a while. They'd started making a climb a little bit, but I still was under the impression that, well, they didn't play a real tough schedule. So, maybe it's just a product of them beating up on, inferior teams. But, man, they looked really good. That was one of the better teams I've seen this year.
Yeah. Before we get down into those, let's kind of put Division II and Division III to bed, because we obviously had teams that were competing in there. And when we look at Division II, Traverse City Central took it to Caledonia. Again, here we go figuring, would have thought that this was going to be the epic battle, but it turns out that Traverse City Central handles them 42-14.
Yeah, that was that surprised me. I'm not surprised they won, but just the manner in which they won. And obviously, you start with Josh Burnham, the Notre Dame commit, plays quarterback. He's not going to Notre Dame to play quarterback, but he's just a big, strong athlete. That you got your hands full with him. And Mona Shores fans got an eye full of that in the first half last year when they played in the semifinals. And sounds like he and his teammates had their way against a good Caledonia team.
Yeah, you take a look at that, but look at Traverse City Central, who their week 1 opponent was, and week 9 opponent. Might even have been somebody in there also. Eric Sugar scheduled 3 really hard, tough teams, and I think purposely just for the reason for the playoffs to kind of get ready when they had to go against the Mona Shores or Warren De La Salles or teams like that. Looks like that has paid off for him.
The one thing that stuck out in that game with me is, you look at the size of Burnham as a quarterback, and the last quarterback we had of that size, and you're talking about that combination of positions, linebacker, quarterback, was T.J. Duckett. Okay, and T.J. was 240 pounds, linebacker, player of the year, in the country, and played quarterback. So what I look at is a couple years ago when Pat Collins at Montague was scheduled to go down and play at Schoolcraft, and they wanted to switch the game over to Vicksburg, because they had AstroTurf Field.
Right? Yeah.
And Pat said, no, we'd like to keep it on the grass. And they went and put Bryce Stark at shotgun, so he just took the snap and ran downhill the whole game.
Right.
That's kind of what the Caledonia and Traverse City game, in talking to the Caledonia coaches, what it came down to. Burnham took the snap, ran downhill. Caledonia's middle linebacker, that team's built for speed. He's only 165 pounds. You're not going to win that battle.
Even though they played on a turf field, but still it was covered with snow.
Yes.
You're not going to be throwing the ball around. It's not for a spread type system.
Yeah, and so, basically their game plan was, let's just direct snap to him and let him run downhill.
You have the Wildcat.
Yes. We're not handing the ball off. We're using him as lead blocker, and let's go. So good game plan, I think, considering the snow and, good coaching.
The intriguing thing about Division II is, obviously these teams have, they have to get there. But if you project ahead, that if Traverse City Central takes care of business against South Lyon, you've got a possible matchup with De La Salle and Traverse City Central. And as we were kind of kidding, Cal's going to have to wear like his double-billed cap that has TC Central on one side and has De La Salle on the other side there.
I was going to ask you, yeah.
Apparently, I have a man crush on Dan Rowan and Jack Sugars. That was hilarious. I'll give you that. That was funny.
I wonder where are you going to sit like on the middle of the goalpost when that game happens, or not? Just 'cause you don't want to be on one side or the other.
You know, I'm Dutch, so I can be bought. Let's put it that way. No, I mean, and you guys know I'm close with Dan. I'm close with Jack. I know Eric. So that would, in that case, it would be. That'd be tough to actually root for somebody. Maybe if you do root, I mean, Dan's got 4 titles.
Right.
You got, this would be, 3 runner-ups, I think. So he's been there 7 times. Eric, building the program. Nice to see. It would be nice to see Eric get there and get a championship for him and that community and everything that he's put a lot of work in there, even before he was a head coach. He was a defensive coach, volunteer. I mean, he's paid his dues. He's built an elite program. Be nice to see Eric get a championship, much like his father has. He's got 3 and 2 runner-ups. Jack does. So, but yeah, that would be a tough one.
Now, and St. Francis has brought plenty of titles to Traverse City, but it's been a while since Traverse City public schools have gotten anything back. That's back in the Jim Uli years.
Right.
Is that's his name, right?
Yeah.
Way back when. What do you remember about those teams back then?
There was one big school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a lot of
Traverse
talent
City.
to draw from, and. Yeah, you schedule. You want your non-conference game to be if you got to travel, you got to travel. But somewhere along the line, you want to make sure with that size school, you're going to see great talent in the playoffs. So you definitely in your non-conference want to schedule what you have to get a good look.
The thing I remember about Traverse City back when Coach Uli was there was a great rivalry. It was part of the old LMAC. And Muskegon was a part of that. And I used to always joke that even when we went down there into scrimmage them in the summer, there was snow. It just always seemed like there was snow in Traverse City when you played those guys, and they were always really tough games. But you're absolutely right. It was a mega school because, they took 2 teams that are still pretty good and made 2 pretty good teams out of what used to be just a one team. So that's amazing.
And you guys have probably called games at Thurlby Field before, haven't you?
Yeah.
One of the best places, right?
It really is.
It's really nice, that's for sure.
Yeah.
One thing about Traverse City
any place in Traverse City that's inside is a good place.
We know that.
We know that.
Petoskey,
Yeah.
wow.
Right.
A couple years ago, that was brutal.
Yeah.
One thing about Traverse City, there's an article out there. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's an article from the Traverse City, one of the reporters up there. Look at their special teams; they're phenomenal. And even whether it's this Saturday or the following Saturday, special teams, Mike knows so well, are going to play a huge part in a game. They're a third of the football game. People think it's crazy. Never. It's not a third of the game. Yeah, it is. When you look at all the snaps between punt, punt return, kickoff, kick return, and all that stuff is such a huge part of a game a lot of times. So, special teams could really come down into this. And who's the special teams coach at Traverse City Central? Jack Sugars. So you have that, Plus you have for Traverse City Central, you have Jack on the staff who's been to Ford Field or the old Silverdome 5 different times. So Eric can glean a little knowledge from him.
Yeah, special teams aren't special unless you don't have one. Then they're pretty doggone special.
Look at the Lions.
Yeah.
Look at the Lions on Sunday. Wow.
Yeah, you're going to be trying out the kicking for kicking?
No, but I made a text today, and you know who to.
Let's go to Division III and just mention, because Muskegon was obviously a part of that, Cedar reached up and got them in a close one. But DeWitt really took care of Cedar in this one by the score 42-14.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of people out there that were looking ahead to a possible Muskegon and DeWitt matchup.
Yeah.
Of course, that didn't happen. Muskegon lost to Cedar Springs last week, and then Cedar Springs drew that task, and I think DeWitt just showed how good they are still. DeWitt's the team, the only team that's beaten Traverse City Central this year, and they beat them pretty good at the Big House this year. So, I mean, that's they're going for title number 2, their second straight title, or they will be. They got to get past St. Joseph this week. So, beyond that, we'll see where that one goes. But yeah, they got a kid who's a Ty Holtz, an MLive Player of the Year finalist. He'll be probably the Hungry Howie's state champs Player of the Year finalist as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen much of them, seen much of DeWitt. Maybe in past years, Mike, you saw them.
Yeah. Solid program, solid all the way youth, all the way up.
We'll move to Division 5, and I'll tell you what.
Can I add something in a second?
No, not at all. Go ahead, Cal.
if you're a coach who's got a returning team, has returning starters coming back, and I did a little homework on this today. This is who Shane, talking about Division III.
Okay, yeah.
This is who Shane has coming back. At a slot, and I'm just going to use last names, Piggy. Price is your running back. Guy is your quarterback. Linebacker's Hunter. Blackman's the defensive back. Get your kicker back. I think it's Velquez. Is that his name, I believe?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that name. Yeah.
Yep. Here's your linemen: Mathis, Hodgkins, Brooks, Botello, Mills, and Lane. Those guys were all underclassed when they all started. These were all starters that were juniors are underclassed when they're even a freshman. Shane's got to be looking at that going, I have got some pieces here that we can start to rebuild. Health was, a big concern for those guys this year. Injuries really wiped out that team and some health issues. But man, he is almost loaded with kids coming back, and they got a great JV squad. Wow, I think they're gonna be a power to be here soon again.
Yep. And then you got the other side of the state, King. Dante Moore will be back again. He's a junior now.
Yeah.
He's another MLive Play of the Year finalist. He's like a 5-star recruit. They're always going to have talent as well. So River Rouges of the world, they're not going away.
No.
I mean, Division III is tough. You could argue in some respects now that De La Salle's rising again. Maybe not entirely the case, but you could argue that Division III in recent years has been tougher than Division II.
Well, you've seen Muskegon beat those Division I and Division II teams year in and year out.
Right.
I had a conversation with Tony Williams, this week. And I asked him this question. I said, to me, it's a sign of the times. When was the last time Muskegon couldn't draw from a pool of seniors and juniors? They were bringing up this many freshmen and sophomores to contribute. Okay, and I mean heavily. Usually, it's a sign of the times to me, like we talked about with how many 9th grade quarterbacks we see.
Right.
How many 10th grade quarterbacks we see. A few years back, you didn't see these numbers.
No.
And now, even with the tradition Muskegon has, they got to take a year and totally reload with underclassmen. It's it's scary. It's scary because it's hard when you throw in that schedule they've got. When you throw that many 9th and 10th graders out there in that field, they're taking on a lot.
On that topic, too, you look at Traverse City Central, senior quarterback. DeWitt, senior quarterback. I mean, I don't think it's too much of a coincidence.
Well, and I mean, look at Mona Shores' quarterback over there.
Connect me.
Mark, if he's with 98% of the schools in the state, he's starting as a junior.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And here's a young man at his caliber sitting the bench,
Yeah.
because he's got the player of the year ahead of him.
Yeah. Mark came through. He had his 1 year this year, and he had a great season.
Yeah.
I would argue he was the best quarterback in our area.
I mean, he's going to get an opportunity to go to the to the next level.
Yeah.
And what level I don't know, but that's another issue. Holy smokes, there's some good people sitting on the bench right there.
Right.
A lot of times, I think, especially Muskegon or Shores, their third string guy would be an all-star at a lot of schools, but they just can't get to see the field because the guys in front of them are even that much better.
Sure. Go ahead.
You may go on now.
Okay, Max. Thank you, Cal. Appreciate that.
Talk
Division
about your man.
Division 5, Grand Rapids Catholic Central 25, Oak Ridge 6. Again, going in, we figured that Oak Ridge is going to be the decided underdog. But you look at that score, guys, and tell you what, Oak Ridge battled these guys.
Yeah, and it was 7-0 at halftime. They were
Yeah.
down, and they had chances. Our Zach Twago covered that game. And they had their chance, and it was another one of those, I don't want to say blizzard, but there was a considerable amount of snow coming down. And that changed things a little bit because Grand Rapids Catholic likes to throw it around a little bit, and they couldn't.
Right.
And even Nolan Ziegler, another Notre Dame commit, he plays safety for him, and he's been playing receiver. They moved him to the backfield just to get him some touches, and that made a big difference. But Oak Ridge moved the ball. They just couldn't finish it with points a lot of times.
Right.
But they weren't completely overmatched like maybe last year even.
Right.
So.
No, I just, I think about Oak Ridge, and it's like I talked to you after the game Fridays, Scott. The running back Oak Ridge has got
Vanderput.
Yeah, Vanderput. If he would have played for Lawton,
Yeah.
because that's who the running back from Lawton reminded me of was Vanderput, and I thought, I don't know if Vanderput is really that good, but I can tell you this: his offensive line is probably player for player the best offensive line in the state.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no weakness in their offensive line. So whatever person is carrying the football, back there,
it's going to look good.
oh, it's going to look good. I almost made a comment that I could have run through that hole.
You could have, just not as fast, right?
Yeah, wheels don't move.
Sure.
Or the water.
Yeah.
The thing that stood out for me was I don't know where I read it, but it was the post-game comment for the Grand Rapids Catholic Central coach. Might have read it from CatchMark here, where he just went on and on about Oak Ridge's kids in terms of, hey, these guys really came to play. They have nothing to hang their heads. And sometimes coaches is just coach speak and all this type of stuff. But you really got the feeling that wasn't the case. I mean, there was definitely some respect there.
Yeah, I think Kerry reflected that too about his own players, and just how much more prepared, or how much they felt a lot better, let's just say, going into this matchup than they did last year. Now, honestly, the weather probably benefited Oak Ridge a little more this year, just because it's kind of the great equalizer when you get that kind of weather coming in. But they, he thought they did what they could. And there was a great quote from Corey Vanderput to finish Zach Zweigel's story about how, here we are, it's 7-0 at the half or whatever. We're playing this great team, and here we are, just a bunch of kids from Wolf Lake, Michigan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great one. Kerry Harger, he's got some guys coming back, Danachek, Jones, and he's got some good linemen, McFadden, Bean, Lowry, Garcia, and their defensive nose tackle, Johnston. They'll probably flip him into the offensive side. So he's got his cupboard. I mean, he lost a lot of really good seniors, but he's got some guys that are coming back that he can build with also.
Yeah, Danachek, of course. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Danachek is the first one I said, but thanks for listening.
Well, anyway, thanks for playing along.
The battery.
Yeah.
It's a battery. But he's got some guys coming back. He's got some building blocks to work with.
Right. Division 6, Lansing Catholic, Montague. Lansing Catholic 31, Montague 13. Montague actually jumped out to a lead in this one, 7-0. And you're thinking, hey, well, what's going to happen here? But Lansing Catholic just a little bit too much.
I thought they had a puncher's chance going into it. I knew they'd be the underdog, but and actually Lansing Catholic, after they stopped Montague on the game's first series, marched down the field and they looked like they were going to score right away, and then Colton Blankstrom stepped in and picked off a pass and returned it maybe 30 yards or whatever, set them up, and then they scored. And like you said, up 7-0 through the end of the first quarter. Second quarter is where it got away.
Yeah.
Montague fumbled twice, once at their own 38, once at their own 23. That led to 2 touchdowns right there. They gave up 24 second quarter points and lost 31-13.
Yeah.
So, I mean, turnovers were big in that. Now, Lansing Catholic's a tough offense to stop.
Yeah.
They're passing attack, and they've got a kid, Alex Waters. He's a senior who, like a 3 or 4 year varsity kid, and been leading the state in receiving yards, and he's just really dynamic.
Yeah, he's one of those kids that does everything. I mean, he not only, that's enough to be the receiver he is, but I know he helps him on the defensive side of the ball and all that other stuff too. So he's just truly one of those blue chip players.
Yeah, Mel Tucker's kid plays for him too, the Michigan State coach. He's starting defensive back for them. So he was out there running around while, so he's out there at 1 o'clock. His dad has a game at 4, so his dad can't go to his game because he's trying to get Michigan State ready for their home game against Maryland. So
sure.
But I bet the kid went to the game afterwards.
I'm sure. Well, they were talking about it after the game. The kids were like, "Hurry up, let's go. We got to get to the MSU game."
Yeah,
so.
sure. Wow. Yep.
And Mike, we going into this one, we thought Montague was gonna have to fight an uphill battle in this one, and obviously they did.
Well, and I know Chase Gall was out with the COVID protocol, and I think that's going to be that's going to come into play here in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
The way COVID's kind of ramping up here around the state again, and so it'll be interesting to see who shows up for the games and who's scratched out of the lineups. Hopefully everybody's healthy, but yeah, I thought Montague, considering the injuries and the health issues they had over the course of the season, they were in some good ball games. Did a good job.
Sure.
I was pretty proud of those kids.
And Cal, I mean, when we talk about the future, they're going to lose, as everybody does, you're going to lose some fine seniors. But they were a team that had a lot of underclassmen on this team. And we hear that the lower portions of the program, especially the 9th grade team or 8th, are just they're loaded. So it looks like Montague's still going to be pretty tough here.
Whitehall's a team that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I think Monty, from what I heard, that they're really good in the 8th grade class. 9th grade, 10th grade, maybe not as much. I know their JV struggled.
Right.
But I don't think there'll be too much of a gap. But Whitehall is, Mike's right, they're absolutely loaded from freshman on up, maybe even down to 8th grade up. But
Right.
Their future's really bright, too.
Montague's got 4 linemen coming back, and Winkleman, Jancic, Brashfield, and Booth. Hayden McDonald's the loss, so it's a huge loss for them. But you got 4 of those 5 coming back. Gowell, he's going to be back next year. Baird, Olson, and Olson, which we were really high on him. We thought he, came up. That was number 8, I believe, for them. Really nice player. He's only a sophomore. And Jarka, once again, is back for them. They got, it looks like they're going to have to develop a quarterback. I'm not sure who it's going to be, so I don't know if you guys got a line.
Gowell play?
He
was the JV quarterback.
Was he?
Yeah, I think Gowell would probably be in that. Maybe a front runner for that. But you're right about Olson, too. He's a kid that really impressed me when he came up.
Yeah.
Big kid. I mean, 6'2", 6'3" as a sophomore. And in the Reed City game, the district game, he caught a nice pass over the middle and kind of turned it into a touchdown with his ability to run the ball after the catch. And yeah, he's just a nice looking athlete. He played some defensive back for him too.
Yeah, I mean, that shelf's not empty by no means. They're losing some good players, but I mean, when you get 4 or 5 starting linemen back, that's also huge. It makes it a little bit easier for your head coach to scheme and develop. And now he's got 9 months, and to just continue to get his system in, to be with the kids, and get them in the weight room. And so he's going to have a full off season now also.
Division 7, the game that both you guys were at, Mike and Scott, 41-22 over Muskegon Catholic. I mean, this was the one that we kind of dreamed a little bit who would, maybe have the chance of our 2 teams. We thought maybe Muskegon Catholic. So I guess just, again, not seeing Catholic or Lawton from my standpoint, I was a little bit surprised by the point spread here, a little bit, 41-22.
Yeah, it was. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was from the beginning. Wouldn't you agree, Mike? It was. I mean, right away Lawton established themselves, and it's like, wow. And I mean, they scored that first touchdown on the little out pass, and a kid just laid a vicious block on a Catholic kid. I don't know if you saw that in here from the press box level, but the kid from Catholic just got, it was one of those deals where I wondered if they're going to throw a flag for like a blindside type block. But I mean, the kid just got obliterated and cleared the way for that Jake Roof, which is the kid that Mike was talking about that reminds us so much of Vanderpool. Even wears the same jersey number 22. So I was impressed from the start. And then just their size, but they didn't have like big sloppy kids. They were big kids that looked strong, athletic. I mean,
very lean. I mean, just walking down on the field, talking with Zerwan and Rebecca and walking with their players, and then going to the other end.
Yeah.
And, I spent some time talking to the offensive line coach, and I said, it's obvious you've been feeding these kids at Big T's there, but their kids, it's like you were saying, Scott, there's no overweight, kids out there. They're just good, solid-looking athletes, top to bottom on the roster. So what they put out there in the field, it was obvious from the first series.
Right.
But I'll tell you one of the greatest things that I've seen in a long time was at the conclusion of that game, and you would have appreciated this, okay?
Pizza for everyone?
Yes, everybody on the field had a man crush. But seriously, we were talking about
I had a man crush on those Lawton.
And I'll tell you what, when the game
hit
20 seconds, and so the clock's just running, and the 2 teams are standing there, Muskegon's, one side, Lawton's on the other side, and this was so cool because the players started going in each other's huddle.
Wow.
Okay? It ran down to 1-0. They never left the field. They stayed right out there in the field shaking each other's hand. Every player hugged every player.
Man.
And they were on both sides just walking. They would not come off the field. The coaches are over there going, and then the kids just had their helmets off. We're talking, and it was like, it took 5 minutes to get them off the field and separated. And then when they went through the line and shook hands, okay, they lined up for the presentation of the trophy. They did the same thing.
And that was the thing. I was, after the game, I captured some of this on video, and we captured a couple photos of it. And even in the video post I wrote, I mentioned that the sportsmanship which is what really impressed me too. And
It was so classy.
there was I was talking to Sam Convertini, a senior from Catholic, and he was emotional. You know, his eyes were all red. He was having a tough time. You know, it was the last game.
Sure.
And he tipped his cap to Lawton, and then he said, and I asked him about how special it was to wear that number 22 jersey. He goes, my grandpa wore it, my dad wore it, my younger brother Brian, who wears number 9, he'll be wearing it. And it was really emotional. And then after that, I left that interview, and then a couple Lawton players came, and Brian and Sam Convertini were hugging each other, and then the Lawton players started hugging them.
Wow.
Came in and hugged them, just to try to console them, just say,
Right.
you guys, gave them credit, just try to say you guys are a tough team and all that. It was great to see.
And it was interesting too. Both teams, Muskegon Catholic's the home team, but both teams walk out the same gate and get on buses right next to each other.
Yeah.
And there goes both teams.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's so refreshing, especially today. I mean, we kind of all you hear is the negative, and you definitely hear about it when there's not good sportsmanship, but it kind of warms the heart a little bit, and knows that hey,
But somebody's teaching that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not something they just they
Right.
were born with.
Right.
This is something that they were taught.
Sure.
Okay. And whoever the coaches, the parents, the teachers, but teaching those kids the importance of sportsmanship like they demonstrated,
Right.
it made you appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, a real appreciation for whoever taught them that.
Sure.
Because the kids caught it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, the adults noticed it.
Another thing I'll say about that too was you look at Lawton, and you can just tell they know their way around the weight room, and that kind of ties in what we were saying, how good they looked. But there's a guy I know down there when I was working at the Kalamazoo Gazette for a number of years, Jim Turner. He's an assistant down there at Lawton, and he was telling me about their center. Carter Main is his name, number 53. And you look at the kid, and he just looks like a monster. He's like 6'2", 270. And he goes, that kid was built during COVID. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, he was in the weight room all the time. He never left the weight room. He was like 6'1", 230 or whatever he was. Now he's like 6'2", 270. Just added all that muscle.
Right.
But what impressed me even more was talking to him and the roof kid, just how well spoken they were. They had great interviews. They were, you can just tell that that they're kids who just get it, and they're kids I could tell the Carter Main kid was probably a really good student too, just the way he spoke.
Is Roof a senior?
He is.
Okay. And they're that kind of that Hoosier school too. Never been beyond a district, I believe, or something like that. So I mean, they're really in
that was their first district title this year.
So they're really in uncharted waters for these guys. So again, that's kind of that feel good story too. Cal?
I'm good.
You're all good with that? Okay. Well, I thought we'd take a little bit of time here, the time we have left, and maybe kind of just reflect on the good and the bad and the ugly of this year. And
How about your game of the year? What was the game of the year?
Man, you got me on
Don't,
the spot
don't
now.
ask us to.
yeah.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Best game of the year. It came to me like this.
Okay.
Mine
Yeah. Well,
is
you had some.
Week 9, Muskegon Catholic
Oak Ridge,
at
yeah.
Oak Ridge.
That was the best game.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah.
Had a little bit of everything, didn't it? Including a malfunctioning clock.
and my second was Ravenna at Oak Ridge.
Yeah.
They were down by 20, was it 20-some points
It was 30, what was it?
at halftime?
Yeah.
36
They came back and
to
tied
7
it.
or something like that, or 35-7 or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
No, the Catholic Oak Ridge game, definitely. It was a little bit of everything, like kind of just the back and forth nature of it, the ebbs and flows.
The blocked field goal.
Yeah.
And then they take it down to,
Yeah.
it's over if they make,
And then they
Right.
score, Catholic scores, or they were down 28-16 in the fourth quarter, Catholic
Sure.
was. And in some ways, in some respects, it reminded me of that great Montague Oak Ridge game. When was it, 17 or 18, when Montague won on the final play of the game, and then they won on the 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
Kind of had some elements of that where you think they're just down and out and they're not coming back, and Catholic pulled it off. They got the blocked field goal, scored, got another stop, went down and scored with 12 seconds left,
Yeah.
and they were tied at that point, but they don't kick PATs this year.
Right.
So they were going for 2 regardless, and they got that and won it.
Yeah, I think ours probably was. I mean, it wasn't a big dramatic game or anything because we didn't have it. We had a lot of one-sided games. But I'm thinking of the Montague-Ravenna game where Ravenna really, I mean, Montague couldn't really put much of a play. I think did that wind up being like 14 to? I mean,
14-7.
Yeah, a one-touchdown game, and it wasn't like you were on the edge of your seat necessarily, but it was just the fact that hey, what's Ravenna going to have for Montague? Anything? And boy, they toughened it out. So that was probably going to be. That'd be my vote anyhow.
Yeah, that was a good game. And also, I mean, I think the game that shocked me the most was Oak Ridge's dismantling a Whitehall. And you just watching it play out in front and just going, I didn't see this coming.
Right.
You know, I think we all kind of thought Oak Ridge was going to be right there for the conference title, and
Sure.
ended up not being a game. But to watch them just dismantle Whitehall when you're totally just baffled.
Right, exactly.
And that's kind of piggybacking off that. That stunned me, but what stunned me possibly even more was how Montague dismantled Oak Ridge was the week or two after that.
Yeah, 2 weeks after that. Yeah, that was,
We were there for both dismantlings.
Yeah, we were.
There's one other topic, too, that I'd like to bring up. I know we probably have other things we could talk about, but because I've been asked this by different people, including the people at OV, they didn't have a varsity team this year. They opted not to have one because they felt like they didn't have enough upperclassmen to safely field a varsity team. They didn't want to bring maybe a bunch of young kids that weren't ready. Now, Catholic did that a couple years ago where they did have young kids, but they brought a lot of them up, and they were all seniors this year. And you might hear people over there argue, well, we did it. Why couldn't OV? You know, and OV's like, well, we weren't, maybe didn't feel in a position. What do you guys think about that? What do you think that maybe, how will that bode for OV going forward? They're going into the West Michigan Conference next year.
Right. And they're going into the big end of the deep end of the pool of the West Michigan Conference too. And I go back to something that when we had the Power Hour, Mike, that you had said about, you know, underclassmen playing extreme underclassmen playing at the varsity level, that the disparity between a freshman and a senior. I mean, so you got to really take that into account. I mean, it's easy for people just to say, well, yeah, why don't we bring up a bunch of freshmen and just put them on there against varsity? Well, you're talking that you might be looking at not only some immediate injuries, but also psychologically. All of a sudden, I mean,
a lot of kids never get to that point because the parents squash the idea.
Yeah,
they're not in favor of it.
Right.
Okay, so there's a lot of hurdles to go through.
Right.
You know, and a lot of kids, their egos will say, yeah, I want to play on the varsity. You know,
right.
Well, again, if you're bringing young kids up, you better be playing them, in my opinion. Don't bring them up to run, you know, to be second string when they could be getting game time experience,
right?
You know, down there, you know, at the JV level. But that's an issue.
Yeah.
You know, the young kids and.
So to Scott's point, I mean, how. It's never good to have to miss an entire year, and now you're going to be going into a different league. I mean, how, you know, we're all guessing here, but what's your thought on how many steps they've got to run to catch back up again?
You know, I go back, fellas, to the Grand Haven not having a JV team.
Right.
Okay. What do you do to make up for that lack of year with that age group of kids?
Right.
You know, how do you recoup it?
Sure.
West Ottawa went through that too, and. Is it what we're seeing now? Is that a product of that or not? I don't know.
You know, I just like I said, the game is changing. You know, the game is changing, and you got to. I mean, I'm sure the coaches are in that building, you know, talking to talent, recruiting, and it's not good.
I would bet it's a 3 to 5 year process for OV to get up to where they can play with the big boys and you know. In the gold division, because there's some power schools there that are hungry year in and year out that want to have success, and so I would guess it's 3 to 5 years.
It'd be kind of neat to see if OV can build that program back, and you get back to talk about that rivalry with Oak Ridge and Orchard View. I mean, that for years and years and years.
There was a time there where there was coaches maybe on one side or the other. They wouldn't even utter the name of the other school.
Yeah, the school down the road.
With Ohio State and Michigan, they said that school, you know, to the east or that school to the west, kind of like that.
It'd be interesting if you had a conversation. Was it Coach Bird over there?
Over at what, Reese Buffer?
No, I'm talking at OV.
Rademacher.
Rademacher.
Yeah, Rademacher. But if you talk to him and find out, have you lost any kids to transfer? You know, have any kids transferred out of your program? Because if those kids, 9th, 10th graders are looking, saying, you know what, I don't want to miss another year.
Right.
I don't want to miss another year playing football.
I didn't ask him that. I did talk to him a couple weeks ago about he really likes the freshman, sophomore classes. You know, the thing that I think is unfortunate, and there's not much you can do about it, but you get seniors, and they didn't have a real big senior class, but you got a really good athlete like a Darius Williams, who was a nice football player for him, and a really good basketball, really good point guard for him.
Right.
I mean, he's just out. You just don't have a senior football season, so he went back and played soccer this year just to have some kind of competitiveness going still. But it's too bad. I mean, but it's not like he can just pick up and go to another school in that short a notice. But, yeah, but to your point, yeah, we'll be curious to see. You know, we don't know what the future is going to hold here. I might leave and go somewhere else.
Or do you have coaches that say, okay, we got them, we want to keep our thumb on them, we want to keep them down, we don't want them rising up. So when you start playing some of these bigger schools, and I'm just going to throw Oak Ridge in there because of that rivalry. This Kerry politely go, okay, I'm going to beat you by 40 or 50 because I don't want your kids thinking that they can play with us. Much like a CSAA team, CSAA Gold. You know, I think in the back of and Kerry's full of sportsmanship, but you got to be thinking in the back of his mind, I don't want these teams thinking that they can come over here and give us a game. I want to just stay in their head, and that's all part of the game also. Right. So, you know, like I'm going to jump on these guys 28, you know, for instance, what they did to Tri-County. I'm going to jump on you 28-0, and I'm just going to kind of keep the gas on a little bit. I'm going to start rolling players out there. And if you make a threat, I'm going to put my starters back in. But I don't want you thinking that you can beat us.
You're going to try to keep him down as long as he can?
Oh, yeah. But, you know, also try to do it, for lack of better words, politely. I'm going to throttle you.
Yeah. You know, we talked, another topic here is we talked about Muskegon Catholic Central, and maybe you got a pulse on this, Scott, is obviously the Lakes 8 is a conference going nowhere. I mean, you got some teams that were pulled into the West Michigan Conference from that. Obviously, you got, you know, MCC, a part of that. I mean, I can't see them having a conference next year. And then I guess the next question is what happens to MCC? What do you see happening?
We've got them, and you've got Christian, which doesn't have a football team. Their kids are playing football for Catholic now. You got Muskegon Heights. Where are they all going to go? Is one of them, are all of them looking at like an okay conference now, going to GR to join a conference? I mean, where else are they going to go? Besides being independent, which independent would seem to be a nightmare.
I think they're going to have to be an independent because I think a lot of those schools don't offer enough sports, especially for the OK. Yeah. But you got to offer, I can't remember what it is, but you got to offer a minimum of, is it 12 or 14 varsity sports? Even to apply, you know, I don't think they do. Like,
this is completely my opinion, nothing more than that. But I guess I wouldn't say disappointed, but I thought Catholic would have been a good fit in the West Michigan Conference.
I did too.
Expansion. I don't know if it's in the bylaws that they don't want to take private schools or what it is, but I thought the offerings they have and the status of their programs, I thought it would have been a good fit for the conference. Now,
I've always thought that too. You know, I know there was teams that weren't gonna touch them coming into the conference.
I thought they fit, but that's just me.
Yeah, they're the right size school, and boy,
tell me why you think they didn't?
Yeah,
they did not. Tell me what are your thoughts on that?
And why they didn't join?
Why wouldn't?
Because they.
What's the reason that would hold them back?
I don't think A, they offer enough sports, possibly. B, there's probably they may have had their. You know, I'd say, for instance, I'm going the current 80s and the principal saying, okay, we are going to send out flyers to these schools and we'll see what happens. And all of a sudden they all jump in and go, yes, we want to. And then they're going, oh, we don't have to get to the second part of our list because everybody's joined. So we don't have to go to plan B. Plan A is coming together. It's the right amount. It's 7 teams. You know, so you have, you know, so you can play what then your 6. You have your 6 conference games plus 2 non-conference, which helps with the rivalries. For instance, let's talk about Oak Ridge Ravenna, Oak Ridge Montague. If they want to continue those rivalries, they can.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, if you're asking me, I don't know if it's because people still have that thing thinking that they can pull kids from wherever they want. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but they're not. I mean, like Steve Zerwan has brought up before, school choice has kind of leveled the playing field. Has it gotten all the way back to, can you look at that in private the same? I don't know that you can, but I think it's his opinion. They think it's pretty balanced. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not.
In the last 10 years, how many JV teams has Muskegon Catholic had?
Have they even had any? Maybe 1 or 2, right?
So that could be another reason. Okay? They're looking to have somebody we want somebody that can put a JV team out there.
Right.
So
that their JVers can get some more.
They didn't have a JV team this year, nor did Ravenna. So, and you know, there's some schools out there that struggled to have that. But,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Does Catholic have 14 varsity sports?
I'm not sure, but I know that, like, if you look at, one thing I heard discussed was, why couldn't Catholic play in the bigger division for football if people are really worried about them overpowering people in football and then play the lower division in all the other sports?
Well, and again, I look at it the way the new playoff format is structured. You know, will Whitehall get points for playing? You know what I mean?
Right.
No. And that's why they're looking, trust me, Whitehall's looking for some bigger schools because of the way the current system's set up.
Yes.
You can, even if it's a powerhouse, you're playing a Division IV powerhouse, even if you lose, you're still going to be further ahead.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, you need to play schools bigger just to get the points down, but it also is going to benefit you in the long run playing those better schools.
Well, it shows you where you need to get.
Yeah.
Like at Whitehall, you're Division 4 playing in a predominantly Division 5, 6,
But
7
the
league.
schools you're talking about playing that are bigger than you, now it comes down, do they want to play you?
Right.
No, we don't want to play you because we're not going to, you're getting the points from us, but what are we getting in return?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what,
Good point.
that's,
Sure.
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
You want to play here, but they don't want to go this way.
Yeah.
No. Because what do they have to gain?
They got nothing to
You know,
gain.
like back in the day when people didn't want to play Catholic or they didn't want to play Mendon. Because, first of all, you could lose the game.
Right.
And second of all, even if you do win, you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And you're not benefiting from it, really. So
Right.
why would you do it?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's,
yeah. There's some issues for sure.
it'll, in a year or 2 or 3, give it time.
Right. How about Hart Pirates? Our old friend Joe Tanis gets them to their first 4-win season in a long time. I mean, we've all talked about with the expansion of the West Michigan Conference. I think they and North Muskegon are going to be some interesting battles. I mean, I think the day maybe of Hart being the doormat, the take for granted, hang a W there, then that's coming to an end. I think.
We got to see Joe put together 2 or 3 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not just one.
Right.
I look at, on the way down here, I'm thinking, who's your coach of the year? Okay, well, let's define what your coach of the year really means. Somebody that had the best record.
Right.
Okay, well, I can tell you from experience, okay, some of your best years of coaching are not with the best talent you've ever had.
Right.
You're fighting like a dog just to be competitive.
Sure.
With teams.
Sure.
And so when you talk about a guy like Joe Tanis with 4 wins up there,
Yeah.
now think this thing through, fellas. That's a heck of a job of coaching right there.
Right.
To pull 4 wins out.
Right.
Even though Phil Fortier up there at Shelby, you look at his record and you're going, oh no. You look at the kids he's got out. I'm telling you what, he hadn't given up. And then you think, why would a guy like Lorenzo coach how many years up there with, we're not talking about wins. We're talking about how many touchdowns did you get.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So why would guys stay in those positions? You know what? Because they're committed to the kids in the community.
Yeah.
So I sit there and I tip my hat to those guys. Cause
Oh, sure.
You know what? Like I said, some of your best jobs of coaching are when you're really backed up against the wall.
Yeah.
You don't have the talent.
Right.
And you're just trying to find a way to get first downs for those kids and be competitive in games.
Yeah.
Well, look at North Muskegon. I mean, they had a sub 500 record this year, but they battled in a lot of games. Now, they played Catholic relatively tough. They were leading in the first half of that game, or tied at the half. They lost to Ravenna 7-6 in the playoffs. They lost to Oak Ridge by a touchdown. They were only down 7-0 against Montague for a good stretch before Montague
Down to
pulled
the third
away.
quarterback, right?
And so, they lost Young, their freshman quarterback, who was an honorable mention all-conference player. And they lost Belmonte, who was one of the better overall players in the league. But they still kept coming out and battling. And then on top of that, their coach suffered a couple heart attacks, and he came back and coached from the press box. And that's just an example of just continuing to battle. And I think, looking ahead, I think they're going to be probably the team to beat going into next year in that division. You've got them. Ravenna has some nice skill players back. They're going to have to fill out the rest of that. And then Hart, like you mentioned, those are probably the top 3. I'm not sure what Holton's going to have. They lost a good quarterback, or they're losing a good quarterback and some good receivers. But
Sure.
yeah.
I think, Coach, with him, you want to keep your stress level down. I don't think I go in the North Muskegon press box. Right?
Yeah.
That place is nuts,
That's
man.
full
Wow.
contact. Full contact.
We found that out this year. Holy cow.
Is that because you guys were in there?
Yeah.
I think so,
Yeah,
man.
something like that. How about the Fruitport Trojans this year? I mean, Gavin Reams has a great senior year. Fruitport, for whatever reason, it's been kind of really struggling to find themselves. You might as well say since Steve Wilson left. But yeah, I mean, they put together a pretty representative year this year.
That's a tough league they play in. You know, with you got Unity, you got West Catholic, you got Spring Lake.
Sure.
Allendale's been solid over the years. Coopersville. It's just that's a tough league they're in. And then on top of that, they played Cadillac.
Yeah.
Played them twice this year because they played them in week 2, and then they played them in the playoffs, and actually, played to a 43-35, shootout game in the playoffs. So. Yeah, they had some nice skill guys, and I think they're slowly building. But it's tough to rise when you're in a tough league like that.
Speaking of tough leagues, Reese Puffer, You know, I've always called him kind of the sleeping giant. But you look just in football, and I know there's more sports in football, but boy, oh boy, how much have you got to raise your game to compete in that OK green with the likes of a Muskegon and a Mona Shores year after year? And even, you know, when you do make strides, you know, it's like nobody but the Reese Puffer fans kind of know it. So that's kind of a tough road for Coach Bird to have to hoe as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's tough, and I don't, you know, you come over to the Muskegon area, and I think in a way you kind of know what you're getting into, but maybe not completely until you're actually here. I mean, you've covered a lot of games and coached a lot of games. I mean, if you look at coming over from Grand Ledge, coming over to a tough neighborhood where there's Muskegon and Mona Shores, I mean, how do you overcome, or how do you even measure up?
My thing is this: I look at a school like Reese Puffer, okay, if I'm going to go in there and I'm going to coach at that school, before I take the job, I'm going to do exactly. I mean, and Roan does this too. Mm-hmm. If he had to sat down with Melima over there at Fremont, right. You know, when you can, as the head coach, when you have control over your football program, that you can have your kids lift in the weight room in the daytime as a class.
Right.
Okay. When you can get the football program structured the way Dan Roan had it, okay, and a lot of coaches have it. Most coaches don't have it, but in my opinion, that's exactly what the administration needs to look at and travel around and look at some schools, see how they're structured for football, and the administration needs to now back that philosophy and implement those things into the program. That's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
I think Tony Sigmund was battling that a little bit, or has been at Whitehall.
A lot of coaches do. A lot of coaches. But I'm saying when you look at the competition that Reese Puffer is playing,
right?
Okay, what's it going to take to get us kick it up a notch? I'll tell you what it takes. It takes the administration, and it could be happening, I don't know.
Right.
Okay, but it takes the administration committing to the football program, saying, what can we do? Let's travel around and let's pick 3 schools out around the state, okay, and let's go see how they're structured.
Yeah. Well, you make a great point with Roan, because to this day, when you mention John Melima, I mean, he smiles. I mean, you could tell back then that, yeah, exactly. I mean, Melima really was the guy that bent over backwards
but you talked about weightlifting with Lawton.
Yeah.
Okay? Let me tell you something. When you can have a strength and conditioning class throughout the course of the school day, you don't have to take time out of practice or weekends. Right. You know, and you want to make sure those kids are lifting 3 or 4 days, not to gain strength, to maintain. Okay, 90% of athletic injuries are in joints. Mm-hmm. You want to keep those joints tight. You know, you're not looking to add weight and, hey, I went from 330 bench to 350 during the season.
It's injury prevention.
That's exactly why you lift weights.
When I was going to Ravenna, that was like late 80s, early 90s. That's when Dusty was coming through. Ravenna never had a power PE class before that. When he came, he brought that. And that, I mean, Ravenna's not going to have like the best athletes rolling out year after year, and they had a good stretch where they had some nice athletes coming through, but it starts in that weight room.
Well, and he ran I formation power football
forever.
So his kids, you know, it's a long, hard season when that's your philosophy offensively. Yeah. But I just think Reese Puffer, in my opinion, I think it'd be interesting to look into that one and say, you know, what can we do if you're in that system, in that football program, in that administration? We need to really look at how we're structured, not just how we're teaching football, but how are we structured? Are we structured for success? Can you imagine trying to teach chemistry, or how about computer science or something like that, and not have computers? You know.
Right. No, and Matt Bird had success at Grand Ledge.
You know
where he came from.
Yeah. Why?
You know
why? Right. How is he structured differently there than here?
That's the question.
Maybe he's
you
not.
Have to drill down in that, find that out.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, I've been saying all along, and maybe he just doesn't. He needs to have a signature win here at some point to help to get more excitement in that school. Maybe he just doesn't have those athletes that compete with the Big Reds or the Sailors. But I think he needs it. And I think if you ask him, he'd probably tell you, yeah, I do, to just get some more excitement. Going back to like what Mike was talking about in communities, I had lunch with my pastor today, and we were talking about what would it ever take to like some of these schools in the 37 quarter. So, for instance, I'll just say Grant or Newaygo. You know, you need to go out and you need to find that coach. And I'm going to say Dan Rome, because he's certainly one for taking programs and building them into giants, you know, which was what he did at West Catholic and now Warren De La Salle. And you need to find those guys, or maybe younger Jack Sugars. And I don't care what you got to pay them. You know, and I know the community is going to get upset. The school board's not going to go for it, and the superintendent's going to get jealous because this guy's making more than what he is. But you need to go find that young Jack Sugars and say, I'm going to pay you, I don't care if it's $150,000 a year, but I want you to come in, I want you to change a culture in our school, change a culture in our community. And then now with School of Choice, now you start to draw all these kids from other schools that are coming in and want to be part of that.
And in our community, Muskegon community, you know who has done exactly that? Think about Matt Koziak.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me, let's look at the history pre-Koziak there and with Koziak there.
Sure.
So what he did, stepping into that program, an awful lot of things were changed.
Yeah.
How he changed them, I don't know all the details.
Right.
Okay, but I can tell you
Yeah.
some things changed.
Yeah.
Now, how much? I mean, this could be another discussion for another show. So I got to be careful here not to open a can of worms. But if you
Open
look
it
at-
up, let's go.
If you look at Dan Rome specifically, he's won everywhere he's been.
Yeah.
But he was capped at Fremont. At West Catholic, he wasn't capped, and at Lady LaSalle, he's not capped. Why is that? Is it because they're private? Because they have advantages that maybe Fremont doesn't?
He can
Well,
fundraise.
He's got more resources, right?
Yeah.
He can fundraise. I mean, you look at the money he raises for his football programs. We're not just talking.
And that's not a knock. I mean, he's won everywhere he's been.
Right.
It's just
He's
Well-
very, but
Well, he
But I can
he
tell you
put
this about
Fremont
him.
on the map, you know.
he did.
Yeah.
he's very. Dan is very organized. He has a calendar, and every day of the year is mapped out.
Yeah.
Every day of the year.
There's not a second he's not thinking about football.
Every
Yeah.
day he'll say, "No football."
And now, I mean, at De La Salle, it's like a West Catholic, but just at a much higher level. He's got 30 assistant coaches. They've got unlimited resources. They got Metro Detroit to draw from.
89 kids on these varsity, 89.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's I saw that last year in the state finals. Not the numbers thing, but I was watching that game and I'm thinking, and Shores won.
Yeah.
It wasn't a runaway by any means, and I'm thinking, people better enjoy it now because
Yeah, we
starting
talked
next
about
year
that.
and the year after that, it's going to be awfully tough to beat them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Final point I want to make, we talked about Shores a little bit there, but I just want to say the future for Shores. I mean, we said, is there life after Brady Rose? Last year, Konecki comes in. Obviously, there's life after, you know, these players. You got to keep going on. But what are you looking at? What are you hearing about Shores?
That's a tough one because they're losing a good senior class. Like they lost Brady Rose and some other good seniors last year, but they still had a pretty good senior class this year. But this is going to be, I think, a crossroads for them a little bit just in terms of
And they could
who's
go
next.
through exactly through what Muskegon went through this year.
Yep.
Okay, they could be looking for younger kids to step in and work with them and develop them, just like
Yeah.
Muskegon went through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
It looks like Muskegon's a team on the rise.
yeah.
And, you know, for Shores, and boy, those two, they clash, you know, and now you're going to get those kids that are, where am I going to go if you want to do school of choice? Well, who's on the rise? And, you know, who's struggling? Or you get the kid like, yeah, I don't think I can play there, so I'm going to go here
Right.
because I'll get more playing.
Or I don't like what they do offensively, or I don't like
Yeah.
whatever. I like
Yeah.
what they do
Yep.
instead. Who knows?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. School of Choice has flipped things around, hasn't it, for sure. Well, I think that's going to do it for us, guys. This is, as we said, our last West Michigan first and 10, and it's been a year that flew by just like that. I want to thank you for inviting us on, and
Thank you.
and Mike for getting a chance to reacquaint ourselves with each other there. That was
I'm not
Thanks
happy.
for-
I'm not
thanks-
happy about a lot of things.
Thanks for coming back from the Potato Bowl, by the way, to join us.
Yeah.
So I saw your sweatshirt there, your hoodie.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you do what you got to do.
All right, that's going to do it for us. That's on that note. I think that's probably.
Your player of the year.
Oh boy.
I say in the Muskegon area, even though we kind of focus on West Michigan Conference and here at CatchMark, but we covered the Muskegon area. The best player I saw probably overall, to me, it comes down to two guys that stood out to me the most. All things considered, Konecny and probably Vanderput, maybe because Vanderput did on both sides of the field. There's no one that really impressed me. there's a lot of like good players that are good on one side maybe or the other, but in Konechny just played offense. But what he did all season, and then what he did against Muskegon, he passed for over 200 and rushed for over 100 and had 4 or 5 touchdowns against Muskegon. Yeah. That's pretty strong.
Yep, that is.
Mm-hmm. That would be my.
What's yours, Michael?
I like Konechny.
Yeah.
I like Konechny. The thing I'm excited about, I think we've got some really exciting young quarterbacks that are going to be coming through in the next couple of years that all played this year as either 9th and 10th graders.
Yeah.
I think the talent level at the quarterback position in the next 2 or 3 years around the Muskegon area is going to be outstanding.
Yeah, the Stratton kid is just, I mean, you talk about
I feel bad, John, that the two big boys from Whitehall injured and didn't get a chance to play because you're talking about game-changing players right there that we didn't get an opportunity to see play.
They would have most likely been playing into last weekend if had those two been around, and they would have run into unity very likely. And then at that point, you don't know, but you never know. With guys like that, they can change things.
Well, Grayson will be back.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we do spend a lot of time in the West Michigan Conference, so I don't I haven't seen Konechny play, unfortunately, but. Again, going back to the Stratton kid and just improving every game. And I go back to basketball a few years ago when he had Deontay for Muskegon. He was one of the kids that you would see improve every game. And, you expect improvement from game 1 to game 9. But, Stratton, you saw that. And he's, just a kid. So it's going to be fun watching
and Young's
for the next few years.
Young's got unlimited potential throwing the football.
Yep, Young over at North Muskegon too.
Yep, but then even below that, there's a kid at Whitehall that played JV, Camden Thompson, who's 6'3", 6'4" as a freshman, played on the JV. I mean, he's a kid that, I don't know if he'll be brought up as a sophomore or not, but just if you were to see him play, because you'll see him on the basketball court this winter. He's great in track. Yeah. He's part of that Thompson family with Rain, good volleyball player. Autumn Christensen, great Division I volleyball player. Sure. He's gotten that in the bloodlines, but he's another kid to keep an eye on once he comes up. They've got a lot of talent coming up. Whitehall does.
Great. You got a final thought there, Cal?
Players of the year didn't get to play much, just because the routes they were always in. Peggy or Price, you watch what those two do in the future. Peggy, 20 carries in the conference for 600 and some yards, and Shane had to pull them because their leads were so big. How do you not put him or Price, who had over 1,000 yards and 30-something carries? How do you not have them in the mix? And a Miles Walton.
Walton didn't have the stats this year. That was the problem for him, I think.
I think he's playing out of position, by need.
No, and he was. I had this discussion with another reporter. I still think Miles is one of the top 5 players, top 3 players in the air in terms of raw ability.
Yeah.
He didn't have the numbers, but I just don't think he was a natural quarterback, and that's what he had to play.
Yeah.
But, athletically, he's a 4-year varsity starter at Muskegon. You just don't see those guys come along very often. Right.
No, I think him or Konechny probably at Muskegon are maybe the best 2 players. The most upside to play on Saturdays in the future.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Again, we want to send a shout out to our producers this year, Billy, Billy Mann, who's working today, and then Jesse King. We had him for a few games for making that all possible and making sense of the senseless at times. So that's going to do it for us. I'm Jon Russell, Scott DeCamp, Cal VanSingel, and Coach Mike Taylor. Have yourself a good night, everybody.